Hi there. Thank you for coming and checking out today's video. I am so pleased to be here for you today. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Kiara and welcome to my channel, Beauty and Beyond. I am really excited to be growing this channel and gaining an audience, and I want everyone to know that I am totally open to suggestions as far as things that you would like to see from me, because I truly value the opinion of my viewers. I plan to upload new videos every Friday, but as far as making videos and editing videos, that hasn't really been easy to do lately, just given everything that's been going on, and I've just been overwhelmed with things in my own personal life, and I've been out to, a couple of protests for the Black Lives Matter movement, and being involved in that and seeing all of this unfold has been very overwhelming and draining, to say the least. But I'm trying to just get a grip on my life and the things that I want to accomplish. So here we are, we're getting it done. Anyway, enough about all of that. Let's jump into today's topic, which is how I published my first book, my writing process, and what I hope to accomplish. What kind of books do I write? So I write young adult fiction. I've always had a special place in my heart for this genre. I started reading a lot of YA fiction when I was about 12 years old, which is only a few years before I knew I wanted to be a writer and have my own books. I read so many YA series growing up, and I do plan to make a video discussing some of my favorite series and such, so be on the lookout for that eventually. The YA genre is so vast, and there's so many different types of stories to be told, and I wanted to establish my voice as a writer within this genre that I just really love. So that's what I did. My book and where you can find it. So my book, which was published just last year, is called A Bad Joke and a Metaphor. I mentioned it briefly in a previous video of mine. It is available everywhere online where books are sold, and unfortunately it is not sold in physical stores, but we will get into why that is in a little bit. If you'd like to check it out, I'll have a couple of links in the description if you want to go and take a look at it. So how did I get my book published? Once I had my manuscript, I can speak words. Once I had my manuscript completed, I was looking at it, and it was looking back at me, and you're like, now what, sis? What's next? What are you gonna do? What's gonna happen? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know any publishers, or I don't know any agents. I don't even really know anyone that has written a book. So what did I do? I went to the Google and I did some not very extensive research on publishing information, and that is when I stumbled on this website called findpublishinghelp.com, and it's a very straightforward website. They ask you some questions, you give them your information, and they match you with like publishing companies. So I got matched with 2, and the first one, without going into a long tangent about that, it was both of these companies that I got in contact with are publishing companies that cater more to independent authors, so which is what I am. So it's kind of like a form of self-publishing, so you do have to pay them. The first company that called me, the whole thing was very strange, and I didn't really know a lot about the publishing process, but something about them wasn't right. Like, they had different like publishing packages and they just got like more pricey and pricey, and I told the guy, I was like, I can't really afford this, and he was like, oh well, you know, maybe you can ask someone to help you pay for it. And I was just like, what? So they tried to offer a payment plan, but it was just not like the whole thing was just very sketchy. And also, not to mention, when these people first contacted me, they called me like early in the morning, like as I was waking up, and like one of the first things they said was like, so tell me what your book is about. And like they had me verbally tell them what it's about, and I'll get into why that's like a weird thing in a second. But the whole this company was just very sketchy, and they tried to get me to like sign stuff right away, which you should never do. Like, you should never sign something like immediately before you do anything else, which is what he tried to get me to do. It was, I don't know, it just wasn't ideal. But the other publishing company that contacted me, the whole process was very different. I was called and I was asked to send them over my manuscript so that they can review it, and they would contact me in a couple of weeks to determine if they want to partner with me. And I was like, oh, this already sounds 10 times more legit than those other people. So I was, you know, just really happy about that, at least. And they did eventually contact me, and they told me that they really liked my story and that they wanted to partner with me. And again, this is sort of a form of self-publishing. So even though I was working with a company that offered to, you know, make my book for me and like pretty much do the entire process for me, I did have to pay them to do all this, but they did have a payment plan that worked for me, and everybody was super nice and super encouraging, and I was just so thrilled. Like, I didn't even care that I had to pay them. I was just so happy to have someone like my story and want to publish it. So I was given a publication coordinator right away and got started on the whole process. They sent me stuff in the mail to read and look over, and just, you know, laid out the entire process for me, and I was just so excited. So that's pretty much what happened with that. I basically did some version of self-publishing with a company that helps independent authors. The entire process went on for like maybe an entire year. It took pretty much a whole year to finish, and, you know, go through the editing process and, you know, everything that goes into creating your physical book. And they did offer services for editing your cover, but my best friend did my cover for me. It truly pays to be friends with graphic designers. So shout out to y'all graphic designers out there. Y'all are the real MVPs. Like, I just want to shout out to y'all, because y'all are doing the Lord's work, truly. So yeah, that's my process with that. Let's move on to the next thing. So what is my writing process? Usually I like to have my title first before I start working on a story. I don't know why that is. That's just how I've always been and how I've always worked. I usually have like this really good idea for a title, and then I just work my story around the title, and that has just always worked for me for some reason. Most writers don't have to work that way. Most writers have the story first, and then they're like, I'll think of a title later. For some reason, I can't work that way. But good for you if you can just like think of titles, because once you have a whole story written, because I usually have to have that before I start anything else. So that, usually the process for me goes as follows. Title, characters, you know, their names, descriptions, backgrounds, relationships within the story, etc. Location research. Now, location research is usually just if you plan to write a fictional story based in a real place, obviously. Like, if your story is set in, like, Las Vegas or something, like, you just want to do a little research on just the location itself to get, like, an accurate representation of wherever it is you're talking about, if it's a real place. Also, I should mention, if you're writing like fantasy, or if you're world building and you're creating your own world, your own location, then that is a different type of research. That's more like creative research. Like that's more just like you have to, that's much more difficult, obviously, because you have to create your own rules essentially in whatever location that you have created. So, but that's so much fun. Like, I love world building. It's like intimidating and exhausting, but it's gonna be so much fun. And it's a lot more fun than just doing location research for like a real place. But yeah, so location research, and then outlining each chapter. That is gonna be just a big help. Some people like to do outlines, some people don't need to do outlines. I do outlines for each chapter and just lay it out, because that for me makes writing a first draft so much faster of a process. So yeah, just outlining each chapter and kind of knowing how many chapters you want to have in your book is also a huge help, because you kind of have like a map for, you know, where you're starting and where you will inevitably end up. So I think if you're somebody that kind of just gets lost in trying to create just plots and stories and all that, just having an outline is really, really helpful. And then I start my first draft. I personally like to write my first drafts in a journal. There's just something about like writing a story on like paper with a pen that just excites me for some reason. So I'm pretty sure like every book that I've started writing, I've started it in a journal, because something about starting the process this way is just like, I don't know, I like to do it that way. And the only problem is like it'll literally take up an entire journal, and sometimes you have to like start in a new one, but that's okay. But yeah, I like to do it that way, and then I will go, once I finish, I'll go and rewrite it, you know, type it out on my computer. And that makes it easy, like it's so much easier to just, you know, copy the whole thing, and then you can cut stuff out and edit as you go, just to kind of help you out a little bit. I know a lot of people say don't edit, you know, like don't go back and like just write it. That is true, and just in my opinion, that's true when you're writing the very first draft. Like just write it out if you can, like unless it's something like that you need to fix, you don't want to like forget it, then yeah, of course edit as you go. But when writing the initial first draft, like just write it out, and then if you choose to do the process this way, when you're going back and like writing everything out and like typing it out on the computer, it's gonna make the process a lot easier to go back and like, you know, make those changes. So yeah, second draft is like typing everything out, and then you can do like your final draft or your third draft, however many drafts you think you need to do. I'm pretty sure I only did like my handwritten first draft, and then like my second draft, and then maybe like a final draft, so that I can do a full read through of the whole thing. Which brings me to my next point, is after you do your final draft, you do your read through, and that is gonna be probably the most draining thing, because depending on how long it takes you to get through writing an entire book, you've already read it so many times that you're gonna get tired of it, and you're gonna have moments where you're like, oh my god, like this is so terrible. And I promise you, it's probably not terrible, you're probably just sick of reading it. That happened to me when I was writing my first book, like when I was actually like finishing it. I was like, this is so bad, like but I just read it so many times that it was exhausting. So yeah, but it's exhausting, but it's satisfying to finally have it all completely done, and just reading the whole thing from start to finish, and you're like, finally I have a completed project. A+, good job. You finish your draft. you finish it. You got through the entire process. Congratulations. So yeah, that's my writing process. Next, let's talk about what I wish I had done differently with publishing my book. To be honest, I wish I had done more research on acquiring an actual agent and getting a legitimate book deal that would get my book in physical stores. I wish I had worked harder to create a good query letter and going through that process of like pitching to agents, because I think I was really intimidated by having to write a query letter, which sounds ridiculous because we're writers. Like, how hard can writing a query letter be? But I don't know, like the whole process of that really intimidated me, and I was just like, how do you even, like, what's a good query letter? Like, I don't even know, like, oh my god. And I actually, my best friend sent me this tweet from this young adult literary agent on Twitter who was offering to answer questions for young authors. He was like, slide in my DMs if you have any questions about, like, you know, what you need to know to, you know, publish your book or whatever, something along those lines. So I did send him a message, and I had my questions for him, which included things like, you know, where to find an agent and how to write a good query letter and like get your book out there and on shelves, because that's what I wish had been the case for my book. And he was very nice, and he answered my questions, and he told me where to look for literary agents. And he also directed me to his website where he has a list of examples of really good query letters that impressed him as an agent. And I did go and look at that list, and it was very inspiring and eye-opening and made me feel not so intimidated about writing a query letter, because now I had a baseline of what a good query letter looks like and how to pitch to agents. And so that really motivated me. So when I'm ready to, you know, write, when I have my next completed project, like, I won't feel so afraid to have a query letter and pitch them to different agents that specifically cater to my genre of fiction. And I'll be sure to put a link to his website in the description, because I think it will be really helpful to a lot of young writers who are looking to pitch for, I mean, not even just for YA fiction, but any type of fiction. It's just a good guideline to show you the do's and don'ts for writing a good query letter. Also, like, I didn't write this book for it not to be seen and not to be read. And I often think about how maybe things would have been different if I would have worked a little smarter and went a different route. I mean, I'm totally grateful to the publishing company that helped me and got my book out there, because it was my first book and I was so excited, and I didn't really, as an independent author, I knew that I was gonna have a long and hard road ahead of me, because I don't have an audience yet, and I, don't really know a lot of people. Like, I don't have a large following on Instagram or anything like that. So I knew that, like, being an independent author, I was gonna have a long, painful road ahead of me of trying to promote myself and trying to get people to know about my book and know that it was out there, because it wasn't put in actual stores. This company ended up telling me that if I wanted my book in stores, that I was gonna have to go into stores myself and ask them if they would mind putting my book on the shelves. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. I was like, I don't know if I can just go ask people. But I did end up going into a couple of places and asking if they would mind putting my book on the shelves, and they were like, well, you have to call this number, or you have to email these people. I'm like, well, it was like a whole thing. And I was like, how are people, like, doing. I'm gonna do better this time around. I really am. Like, I'm determined to. But yeah, I just feel like if I had gone a different way, the results would have been more satisfying. So with that said, write a good book and write an equally good query letter and find those agents and pitch. I can't think off the top of my head all of the places that that agent from Twitter said to look for agents, so I'll also put that information in the description, because I can't think, like, he said, like, you know, he said, like, agents are everywhere, like, you just have to look for them here, 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 and here, and I was like, okay, like, putting that information in my head for next time when I have a book completed, I'll be ready. You gotta stay ready, so you don't gotta get ready, okay? We're all just trying to make a name for ourselves in any medium of entertainment, and I'm really glad that I have the information and the tools now to do it right this time, and I'm more than happy to share that information with other young artists who are writers who are trying to publish their first book but maybe don't have the following or the audience or the tools to do that. Like, I'm here to help if I can. Like, I'm sure there are so many other people that have the information too, so, like, I'm not saying that I have, you know, all the secrets and things, but I'm just hoping to share what I've learned and my process and what has kind of worked for me and what I think would have worked for me even better. So yeah, that's that on that. And lastly, what I hope to accomplish. As I mentioned earlier, it's been my dream to become a successful young adult fiction writer since I was about 12 or 13 years old, and I've always had a passion for writing and acting and dancing and all kinds of things pertaining to entertainment in general, and my hope has always been to inspire people to pursue their dreams, people like me who hasn't always been represented in this industry as writers or even as characters in all these books. And I wanted to be in a space or create a space for actual young adults in the young adult fiction community who want to dive into a good steamy vampire story, or, you know, a magical fictional tale of magic and adventure, but, you know, maybe you're my age and it's not really socially acceptable for you to read about middle schoolers or preteens or even high schoolers. I don't know, I just, you know, I am an actual young adult, and the word young adult is so, like, I don't know, like, these books, like I said, I started reading these books when I was like about 12 or 13, but, you know, I got older and I found myself not really reading a lot of young adult fiction, but when I would go back and read young adult fiction, I saw voices of writers who didn't represent me or other young adults that I knew, and I was like, this is not okay with me. Like, there needs to be younger voices in the young adult community, and if there are, I would like to know about them, because I want to not only be a voice in this community, but show other people like myself who are young adult or young women, or even, you know, not even women, anybody in this community, especially young Black writers. Like, I want to see more of that, and I know they're out there, and I know they exist. To be honest, I can't even remember the last time I stepped foot in a Barnes and Noble to buy books, especially young adult books, which I know I'm like terrible in writing young adult fiction, and I haven't even like really read a lot of YA recently. But if there are any YA books out there written by younger people or written by younger Black people, like, let me know. I want to read them. I want you to know that, you know, our voices as the younger generation of writers and of creatives, you know, our voices matter. We need to tell stories that represent us. And I think it's important, and I think it's possible, and I think it would be amazing for us to write more stories that represent the underrepresented. And that is a big goal of mine. And, you know, the irony of, you know, my first book being written talking about young 18-year-olds fresh out of high school. But I wrote these characters because I wanted to show that younger people, younger than me, even high schoolers, are capable of having adult conversations that, you know, most high schoolers may be too squeamish to talk about. The way teenage boys are often portrayed in media, like in movies or in books, are just kind of like, oh god, it exhausted me to even think about. But I wanted to write a character that was emotionally mature, but also like he's a teenage boy. How emotionally mature can he be? But that I wanted to show both sides of that it's possible to have an 18-year-old boy who, like, you know, isn't afraid to be honest with himself. That's kind of also was important to me with, like, if I'm gonna write about high schoolers, like, I want to write this version of a high schooler that does exist, that isn't portrayed enough, because, you know, we need to start representing younger people that, you know, aren't shitty. But that's just been my experience with, like, what I've read. But I do plan to write more stories centered around young adults that are actual young adults that are my age. I'm in my 20s. And that's why I love shows like The Magicians. That's the first thing that comes to mind that I would consider to be young adult fiction, but centers around adults that are, like, you know, in the college age. So you have this amazing fantasy story that is actually centered around people, you know, in their early 20s, which I think is amazing. And that's kind of where I want my focus to be, if there is any room for that in the YA fiction. Or I don't know if that would just be considered fiction or YA fiction. I don't know. I guess I'll cross that bridge when I get there. But anyway, just to wrap this up, with all of that being said, I hope this video was helpful and informative, and I hope it inspires you to pursue your passions in writing or whatever it is that you want to do. I didn't think I could do this. I didn't think I could, you know, be a writer. I didn't think I could have my own book. And I didn't think I could be a YouTuber, but I'm here and I'm doing that, and I'm doing my best, and I'm still very new at this. I'm very new at this, and I hope there are people out there willing to go on this journey with me and see where it takes us. I'm excited. I'm excited to inspire you, and I'm excited to see and hear what amazing things we're all gonna do as the future generation of go-getters and go-doers. That's a thing, right? It is. Go-doers. Love that for me. Love that for us. So yeah, enjoy the process, work hard, and be kind to yourself. Creating anything and bringing it to life is hard. It's hard work, but it's fun work. So I'm very excited for you. I'm excited for me. And before I forget, shout out to Victoria Jane, who commented on one of my earlier videos that I made like a month ago, who suggested this topic for me to talk about. Thank you, Victoria. I hope you find this video, and I hope it answers your questions, and I hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, thank you all so much for tuning in, and be well, and I will see you all again very soon. Take care.